The Swiss mountains rose majestically against the grey-blue morning sky, their slopes covered with snow that gleamed like crystals under the first rays of sunlight. Bob Kenyon held firmly to the small hand of Josh, his 6-year-old son, as they walked along the trail leading to the chalet where they would spend their winter vacation. "Daddy, when are we going skiing?" asked Josh, his brown eyes shining with anticipation. "Soon, champ. First we need to settle in and have some hot chocolate," Bob replied, smiling at his son. It was rare to have these moments alone with Josh, especially after the troubled divorce from Laurie. The wooden chalet was cozy, with its windows framed by lace curtains and a fireplace that crackled softly. Bob had chosen this place precisely for the sense of peace it conveyed, something Josh needed after so many months of tension at home. "Can I play in the snow?" Josh was already taking off his coat, eager to explore. "Of course, but stay where I can see you." Bob watched his son through the window, building a snowman with the seriousness that only a child can have for such tasks. He was an intelligent and sensitive boy, with brown hair always tousled and a smile that could melt anyone's heart. That's when he saw the man approaching. John Aston walked with determined steps through the snow, his eyes fixed on Josh. Bob felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Swiss cold. His former brother-in-law had changed in recent months. There was something dark in his gaze, a determination that didn't bode well. "Josh, come here," Bob shouted, but it was too late. "Uncle John!" exclaimed the boy, running toward the man with the innocence typical of his age. "Hello, Josh. How about we take a ride?" John's voice sounded calm, but Bob could sense the underlying tension. "John, what are you doing here?" Bob came out of the chalet, trying to keep his voice controlled so as not to frighten Josh. "I came to get my son." "Your son? Josh is my son, John. You know that." John smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "Oh, Bob, you were always too naive. Josh is my biological son. Laurie never told you, did she?" The world seemed to stop. Bob felt his legs weaken. That's not true. Ask your ex-wife. Or better yet, don't bother. Josh, let's go." "No!" Bob tried to move, but John had already picked up the boy. "Daddy, Bob." Josh looked confused between the two men, not understanding what was happening. "It's okay, Josh. We're going on a special trip," said John, heading quickly to the car he had parked on the road. Bob ran after them, but John was faster. Within minutes, the car had disappeared around the mountain curve, taking with it the boy. Bob considered his son, alone in the snow that now seemed cold and hostile. Bob fell to his knees, his heart broken and his mind trying to process the devastating revelation he had just heard. Chapter 1. 3 months later, Tessie Kenyon looked out the window of her Boston apartment, watching the rain that fell persistently over the city. The phone in her hands had just rung, bringing news she both hoped for and feared. "Tessie?" Laurie's voice on the other end of the line sounded fragile, broken. "I managed to track down John. He's on an island in the Caribbean. St. Matthew." Tessie closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Are you sure?" A private detective confirmed it. "Josh is with him." "My sister, I don't know what to do anymore. It's been 3 months. Laurie's voice was lost in sobs. Tessie clenched her free fist, feeling the familiar anger growing in her chest. John Aston had destroyed her younger sister's life, and now he was keeping Josh away from his mother out of pure selfishness. "Laurie, listen. I'm going to get him." "Tessie, no. It's dangerous. John is unbalanced, and if he finds out that he won't find out. I'll use a false identity. I work in tourism. I know the right people." Tessie was already mentally planning. At 28, she had built a solid career as an international tourism consultant, which gave her access to contacts and resources that could be useful in a situation like this. "I can't let you risk your life for my sake. Josh is my nephew Laurie, and you're my sister. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you both." After hanging up, Tessie walked to the dresser where she kept her photographs. She picked up one of Josh, taken last Christmas before the kidnapping. The boy was smiling at the camera, holding a present, his eyes shining with happiness. It was the image of a loved and protected child, everything he deserved to have back. In the following days, Tessie worked tirelessly on her plan. She obtained false documents through a discreet contact, created an identity as a marine life researcher, interested in studying Caribbean coral reefs. The name would be Teresa Collins, a marine biology specialist from the University of Miami. St. Matthew was a small island in the Lesser Antilles, known for its pristine beaches and small population. The perfect place for someone who wanted to disappear from the world. John had chosen well. "Are you sure about this?" asked her best friend Sarah while helping Tessie pack. "I mean, what if John recognizes you? You met several times at family gatherings. I'm going to change my appearance. Besides, John was always very self-centered. I doubt he remembers me very well." Sarah shook her head, worried. "And if you can't find Josh, or worse, if you find him but can't get him off the island?" Tessie stopped folding a blouse and looked at her friend. "Then I'll improvise. I can't go home without him, Sarah. Laurie is destroying herself over this. And Josh, he's just a child. He doesn't deserve to be used as a pawn for revenge." On departure day, Tessie looked at herself in the airport bathroom mirror. She had dyed her brown hair blonde, cut it shorter, and wore prescription glasses that completely changed her face. The Teresa Collins who stared back at her reflection was a different person from the Tessie Kenyon that John had known. The flight to St. Matthew included a stopover in San Juan, Puerto Rico. During the hours of travel, Tessie mentally reviewed everything. She knew about the island and her plan. She would arrive as a researcher, rent a house, discreetly integrate into the local community, and find a way to approach John and Josh. When the small plane finally touched down on St. Matthew's runway, Tessie felt her heart race. The hot, humid Caribbean air enveloped her as soon as she left the aircraft, bringing with it the smell of the sea and tropical flowers. The island was even more beautiful than the photos suggested. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze. The sand was white as sugar, and the sea displayed every possible shade of blue and green. Under other circumstances, it would be perfect paradise. But Tessie wasn't there for tourism. The taxi that took her from the airport traveled narrow roads bordered by lush vegetation. Colorful houses dotted the landscape, and Tessie could see fishermen preparing their nets on the beach. It was an idyllic scene, almost surreal after months of tension she had lived through. "First time in St. Matthew?" asked the driver, a middle-aged black man with a contagious smile. "Yes, I came to research coral reefs." "Ah, then you'll enjoy meeting Dr. McAllister. He's our marine life specialist here on the island." Tessie felt a pang of apprehension. She hadn't counted on the possibility of there being another researcher on the island. "Dr. McAllister." "Kenneth McAllister. American, like you. He's been here for about 2 years studying mongooses. Very intelligent guy, very respected here on the island." "Mongooses?" "Yeah, apparently we have an interesting population of them here. He has a research station in the northern part of the island. Maybe you two can work together." The house Tessie had rented was in the center of St. Matthew's small main town, a few blocks from the port and local market. It was a wooden construction, painted light blue, with a veranda overlooking the sea and a small garden full of hibiscus and bougainvillea. After settling in, Tessie decided to do reconnaissance of the area. She walked through the cobblestone streets, observing the locals, trying to gather any information about John or Josh. She couldn't be too direct in her questions. On a small island, news traveled fast. It was in a small seaside diner that she heard the first clue. "Oh yes, the man with the little boy," said the establishment's owner, a woman named Carmen. "They live in a big house on the eastern hill. The man doesn't talk much, but the boy, poor thing, always seems sad. Tessie's heart tightened. Sad? Yes. You know how it is. A child should be playing, making friends, but this boy hardly leaves the house. When he does go out, it's always with his father and always quiet. Tessie tried to disguise the emotion in her voice. Maybe he's just shy. Carmen shook her head. No, it's not shyness. It's something else. I've raised 5 children. I know how to recognize when a child isn't well. Later, walking on the beach. At sunset, Tessie processed the information. Josh was on the island, exactly where Laurie had said. But knowing he seemed sad confirmed her worst fears about what the kidnapping had caused the child. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the man running toward her until they almost collided. Sorry, he said, stopping abruptly. I didn't see you. Tessie looked up and found herself face to face with one of the most attractive men she had ever seen. Tall, with brown hair tousled by the wind, green eyes that reflected the evening light, and a smile that seemed genuinely embarrassed. It's okay, she replied, feeling strangely breathless. I wasn't paying attention either. You must be the new researcher, Teresa Collins, right? I'm Kenneth McAllister, but everyone calls me Mac. So this was Dr. McAllister. Tessie extended her hand, trying to maintain professional composure. Pleasure to meet you. The handshake lasted a few seconds longer than would be appropriate, and Tessie felt a strange tingling climb up her arm. I heard you're here to study the reefs, said Mac, finally releasing her hand. Can I be of any help? I know these waters. Well, that would be great. I'm still familiarizing myself with the area. How about coffee tomorrow? I can show you the best diving spots. Tessie hesitated. She was there on a mission, didn't have time for... But maybe Mac could be useful. He knew the island, the people. He could help her indirectly. Sure. Where? How about Carmen's Diner? At 8 in the morning? Perfect. As Mac walked away, continuing his run, Tessie stood on the sand, watching him disappear around the beach curve. There was something about him that intrigued her, a combination of intelligence and kindness that was hard to ignore. But she was there for Josh, she reminded herself. She couldn't get distracted no matter how attractive Dr. Kenneth McAllister was. The next morning, Tessie woke to the sound of waves breaking on the beach. For a moment, she forgot where she was and why, enjoying the sense of peace that the sound of the sea provided. But reality soon returned, bringing with it the weight of her mission. She put on a light t-shirt and shorts, braided her hair, and headed to Carmen's Diner. Mac was already there, sitting at a table overlooking the sea, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. Good morning, he said, standing when he saw her arrive. Did you sleep well? Yes, thank you. The sound of the sea is very relaxing. Carmen appeared with a warm smile. Coffee or tea? Coffee, please. And Carmen's fish tacos are famous, Mac added. Worth trying. While waiting for breakfast, Mac told her about his work on the island. He had arrived 2 years earlier to study the mongoose population that had been introduced decades ago to control snakes and rats, but was now impacting other native species. It's fascinating how an ecosystem can be altered by a single introduced species, he said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Mongooses are efficient predators, but they also affect birds, lizards, crabs. Tessie found herself genuinely interested, not just by information that could be useful for her false identity, but by the passion Mac demonstrated for his work. And how long do you plan to stay on the island, she asked. Initially it was supposed to be just 1 year, but the project expanded. And honestly, this place grows on you. It's hard to imagine going back to city life. I understand. It must be a significant change. Yes, especially after years teaching at a busy university in Boston. Boston, the same place where Tessie lived. She felt a shiver of apprehension, another coincidence that could complicate her false identity. Boston is an interesting city, she said, trying to sound casual. You know it? I've been there a few times for conferences. Mac smiled. Small world. Maybe we've been in the same places without knowing it. After breakfast, Mac took her to see the island's most interesting diving spots. They walked along the northern coast, where the coral reefs were most preserved and the water had crystal clarity. "This is one of my favorite places," said Mac, stopping at a small protected cove. "The marine life diversity here is impressive." Tessie was truly impressed. Tropical fish of all colors swam among corals that looked like underwater gardens. For a moment, she completely forgot why she was there. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "I can lend diving equipment if you want to explore it better," Mac offered. "That would be great, thank you." As they walked back along the beach, Mac pointed to a large house on top of a hill. "That's the Aston's house," he said casually. "They arrived a few months ago, father and son. The man is kind of reserved, but the boy seems nice." Tessie's heart raced. "Aston?" "Yeah, John Aston. I think he's kind of hiding from something. Maybe financial problems or a complicated divorce. It happens a lot around here." Tessie tried to keep her voice normal. "Do you know the family well?" "Not really. The man doesn't socialize, but the boy, Josh, I think his name is. Sometimes I feel sorry for him. He seems lonely." "Lonely?" "Yeah, you know how it is. A child on an island with no other children to play with. It can't be easy." Tessie looked at the house on the hill, her heart tightening. Josh was there, so close. She could almost feel his presence. "Maybe I should introduce myself," she said, trying to sound disinterested. "As a researcher, I mean. It might be interesting for the boy to meet someone who studies marine life." Mac looked at her curiously. "You like children?" "Yes, very much. I have some nephews." It was true, at least in part. "Well, if you want, I can introduce you. I sometimes run into John in town. He seems like a decent guy, just a bit cautious." "That would be great." They continued walking, but Tessie's mind was racing. She had finally found a way to approach Josh without raising suspicion. Mac would be her bridge to the Aston family, but there was something more. As they spent more time together, Tessie realized she was genuinely attracted to Mac. There was an ease in their conversation, a connection she hadn't expected to find, and that scared her. She was there to rescue Josh, not to get emotionally involved with someone, especially with someone who, unknowingly, could end up helping or hindering her mission. "Penny for your thoughts?" asked Mac, interrupting her thoughts. "Sorry, I was thinking about work. Work can wait. We're in paradise." He was right. The beach was paradisiacal, the day was perfect, and the company was dangerously pleasant. "You're right," she said, forcing a smile. "Let's enjoy it." But inside, Tessie knew she was starting to get complicated, and complications were the last thing she needed right now. In the following days, Tessie established a routine. She spent mornings exploring the reefs with Mac, pretending to conduct coral research. In the afternoons, she walked through town, listening to conversations, trying to collect information about John and Josh without seeming overly curious. What she discovered worried her. Josh was rarely seen playing or smiling. When he went out with John, he walked beside his father like a shadow, silent and withdrawn. Carmen had mentioned seeing him, sometimes standing on the house's veranda, looking at the sea with an expression too melancholy for a 6-year-old child. "That boy needs friends," Carmen commented one afternoon while serving Tessie iced tea. "Children shouldn't be isolated like that." "Maybe the father is just being protective," Tessie suggested, though she knew the truth was quite different. Protective is one thing, isolation is another. The boy doesn't even go to the island school. The father said he's homeschooling, but Carmen shook her head. "It's not natural," Tessie agreed silently. John was keeping Josh isolated purposefully, probably, to prevent the child from making friends or adapting too much to island life. It was a cruel form of control. Her opportunity came at the end of the week when Mac invited her to a beach barbecue with some local residents. "It's a Friday tradition," he explained. "Everyone brings something. We build a bonfire, play music. It's very relaxed. Sounds great. And maybe we can convince John to bring Josh. It would be good for the boy." Tessie's heart accelerated. "Do you think they'll come?" "I'll try." John seems to be opening up a bit more lately. Maybe he's starting to feel more comfortable on the island. On Friday afternoon, Tessie dressed carefully. She wanted to appear approachable and friendly, someone a child would find interesting to talk to. She chose a light blue cotton dress, braided her hair loosely, and applied just a little lip balm. The beach was already lively when she arrived. A bonfire crackled in the sand, surrounded by chairs and mats. The smell of grilled fish mixed with the aroma of local spices. Children ran across the sand, their laughter echoing in the evening breeze. Mac received her with a warm smile, offering her a cold drink. "You look beautiful," he said, and Tessie felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you." John said he might stop by later with Josh. He didn't promise anything, but that would be great. Tessie tried to focus on the conversations and music, but her eyes always returned to the trail that led to the part of the beach where John and Josh might appear. She had waited 3 months for this moment. When she finally saw them approaching, her heart almost stopped. Josh walked beside John, his small hands buried in the pockets of blue shorts. He had grown since the last photo Tessie had seen, but was still unmistakably the same sweet boy she remembered. Only now, there was a sadness in his eyes that made her want to cry. John seemed tense, his eyes scanning the group as if looking for threats. He had aged in recent months, stress lines marking his face. "John, great that you came." Mac approached with a genuine smile. "Josh, how about meeting everyone?" The boy looked at his father, clearly asking for permission. John nodded reluctantly. "Josh, this is Teresa," said Mac, bringing him close to Tessie. "She's a scientist who studies marine life." Tessie knelt to be at the boy's height, fighting against the tears that threatened to fall. "Hi, Josh. It's a pleasure to meet you." Josh looked at her with curiosity, but said nothing. Tessie could see the familiar features. Brown eyes like Laurie's, the small nose, the way he slightly frowned his eyebrows when thinking. "Do you like the sea?" she asked softly. Josh nodded shyly. "Me too. I spend a lot of time studying fish and corals. Maybe you'd like to see some photos I took diving." For a moment, Josh's eyes brightened with interest, but then he looked at John, who was watching the interaction with a closed expression. "Maybe another day," John said quickly. "Josh needs to go to bed early." "Of course," Tessie agreed, trying to hide her disappointment. "Maybe we can talk more when you want to, Josh." The boy nodded again, but Tessie could see he wanted to say something. There was a lively intelligence in his eyes, a personality being suppressed. Throughout the rest of the evening, Tessie discreetly observed the interaction between father and son. John kept Josh always nearby, never allowing him to go away to play with other children. When someone tried to talk to the boy, John quickly redirected the conversation to himself. It was painful to watch. "He seems like a good kid," Mac commented. When John and Josh finally left, "Yes, he does," Tessie agreed, her voice a bit hoarser than normal. "You seem upset." Tessie looked at Mac, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. "It's just, you're right about him being lonely. It's sad to see. A child so withdrawn. Maybe with time John will open up more. Allow Josh to make friends. Maybe." But Tessie knew that wouldn't happen. John wasn't in St. Matthew to build a new life for himself and Josh. He was there to hide, to keep Josh away from Laurie and everyone who might question his rights over the unchild. Later that night, lying in her bed listening to the sound of waves, Tessie thought about how Josh had looked at her. There was something there. Recognition. A desire to connect. She needed to find a way to spend more time with him, to gain his trust without alarming John. But how? The answer came the next morning when Mac appeared at her door with an unexpected proposal. "How about we teach some local children about marine life?" he suggested. "We can organize small educational expeditions. I'm sure John would like Josh to participate." It was perfect, a natural way to spend time with Josh without raising suspicion. "It's a brilliant idea," said Tessie, feeling hope for the first time in days. "Great. I'll talk to John today." As Mac walked away, Tessie felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. He was helping her without knowing, being used as a piece in her plan to recover Josh. But she had no choice. Josh needed to return home, to Laurie, to a life where he could be a child again, even if it meant deceiving the man she was falling in love with. The first educational expedition was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Tessie spent the previous days preparing educational material adapted for children, creating presentations about tropical marine life and collecting shells and small organisms to show. Her anxiety grew as the day approached. It would be her first real opportunity to spend time alone with Josh, to begin gaining his trust. On the morning of the expedition, 6 local children gathered on the beach, accompanied by some parents. Josh arrived with John, who seemed reluctant, but was convinced by Mac that it would be a valuable educational experience. "Good morning, everyone," Tessie greeted the group with genuine enthusiasm. "Who's ready to discover the secrets of the sea?" The children responded with excited shouts, except Josh, who remained quiet beside his father. Tessie began with a simple presentation about the different types of marine life found in St. Matthew's coral reefs. She explained about clownfish, sea turtles, starfish, and harmless nurse sharks. "Does anyone know why clownfish live in anemones?" she asked. An 8-year-old girl raised her hand. "Because the anemones protect them?" "Exactly. And what does the clownfish give in return?" Josh, who had been listening attentively, timidly raised his hand. "Yes, Josh. They clean the anemone?" His voice was low, almost inaudible. "Very good. They have a symbiotic relationship. They help each other." Josh's face lit up slightly with the praise, and Tessie felt her heart warm. The next part of the expedition involved observing tide pools in the rocky part of the beach. The children spread out, looking for hermit crabs, starfish, and small fish. Trapped by low waters, Tessie approached Josh, who was crouched alone near a larger pool. "Find anything interesting?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Josh pointed to a small crab moving slowly among the algae. "He seems lost." "Why do you think that?" "He keeps walking in circles, like he's looking for something." The observation touched Tessie deeply. Maybe he's looking for the way back home. Josh looked at her with an expression that seemed too mature for his age. "Sometimes I feel like that too." Tessie's heart tightened. "How so?" "Like I'm lost. Like I don't know where my real home is." Tessie had to fight back tears. "Do you miss somewhere, someone?" Josh looked quickly toward where John was talking to Mac, then lowered his voice. "I miss Mommy and Daddy Bob. Daddy John said they don't love me anymore, but I don't believe it." "Josh." Tessie took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes adults say things when they're upset that aren't true. A mother's love for her child never disappears. Never." "Do you think so?" "I'm sure of it." Josh was quiet for a moment, watching the crab. "Do you have children?" "No, but I have nephews I love very much. And I know that if they were lost, I would do anything to find them." "Josh!" John's voice cut through the air. "Come here." Josh got up quickly, but before leaving, he whispered to Tessie, "Thank you for talking to me. Nobody else does." Tessie watched Josh run toward his father, her heart broken. The child was clearly suffering, questioning the version of events John had told him. She just needed to find a way to tell him the truth without putting Josh in danger. After the children left, Mackie helped Tessie put away the educational materials. "You were great with them," he said, "especially with Josh. He rarely talks to strangers. He's a special boy, very sensitive." "I agree. Sometimes I wonder if John realizes how much his son needs normal social interaction." Tessie looked at Mac, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. "Do you think there's something wrong with that situation?" Mac hesitated. "I don't know. John seems like a dedicated father, but there's something I can't identify. Josh always seems so cautious, so guarded." Children sometimes react like that to big changes. A country change, parental separation, maybe. But my instinct tells me there's more behind it. Tessie felt a sudden impulse to tell Mac the truth. He was clearly worried about Josh, and maybe he could help her. But she couldn't risk it. If Mac confronted John or did something hasty, Josh could disappear again. "Well, I hope that with time, Josh feels more comfortable here," she said finally. "Yes, me too." They walked in silence for a few minutes, the sound of waves filling the space between them. "Teresa," Mac said suddenly, "would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? Not at Carmen's diner, I mean. Something more intimate." Tessie stopped walking. Mac was standing in front of her, a vulnerable expression on his face. Mac, I don't know if it's a good idea." "Why? Is there someone in your life?" "No, it's not that. It's just my situation is complicated." "What kind of complicated?" Tessie looked at the sea, trying to find the right words. How could she explain that she was living a lie? That she was there under a false identity, with a mission that could be dangerous? "I can't explain now, but it's not about you." Mac stepped closer. "So it's about you?" "Yes. Whatever it is, maybe I can help." The sincerity in his voice almost made her crumble. "Mac, I wish I could, but I can't. At least think about it. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Just two people who like each other sharing a meal." Tessie looked at him, at his honest green eyes, at the gentle smile, at the hands that had reached out to help her since day one. "Okay," she said finally, "one dinner." The smile that lit up Mac's face was devastating. "Great, I'll cook for you. My house, tomorrow at 7? "All right." As they parted on the beach, Tessie knew she was making a mistake. She was getting emotionally involved in a situation that required coldness and focus. But the truth was that Mac had become important to her in a way she hadn't expected, and that made everything even more complicated. Mac's house was located on a small hill overlooking the sea, a simple but cozy wooden construction surrounded by tropical plants. When Tessie arrived the following evening, he welcomed her with a smile that made her stomach flutter. He had made an effort. The veranda was lit by candles, a small table was set for two, and the smell of something delicious came from the kitchen. "You cook?" she asked, impressed. "One of the advantages of living alone on an island. You learn fast or you starve." Dinner was a mixture of local seafood with Caribbean spices. Mac had even managed to get a bottle of white wine, which they drank, while watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Tell me about your life before St. Matthew," said Mac, pouring more wine. Tessie hesitated. Every personal question was a minefield. "There's not much to tell. Work, research, some travel." "Family?" "A younger sister. We're very close." At least that was true. "And you? Besides mongooses and coral reefs, what else interests Dr. Kenneth McAllister?" Mac laughed. "Music, actually. I play guitar. Badly, but I play. I like reading biographies. And lately, spending time with a certain mysterious marine biologist." "Mysterious? You are, you know. There's something about you, like you're carrying a secret." Tessie almost choked on her wine. "Everyone has secrets." "True, but yours seem heavy." They fell silent for a moment, the sound of waves filling the space. Tessie could feel Mac's eyes on her, studying her. "Mac, can I ask you a question about John and Josh?" "Sure. Have you noticed anything strange about their behavior, besides the isolation?" Mac tilted his head, thoughtful. "Why do you ask?" "Professional curiosity. I work with families sometimes, and there are certain dynamics that—" Josh has nightmares. The interruption was so sudden that Tessie almost dropped her glass. "How do you know?" "My house is relatively close to theirs. Sometimes at night I can hear a child crying, screams as if he were afraid." Tessie's heart tightened. "And John?" "John always says it's normal, that Josh is adapting. But I don't know. I've worked with children before, in educational programs at the university. Josh doesn't seem like a child who's simply adapting." "What does he seem like?" Mac looked directly into her eyes. "He seems like a traumatized child." Tessie had to look away. "Maybe we should do something." "Like what?" "We don't have any evidence of abuse or neglect. And even if we did, we're on a small Caribbean island. It's not like there's a robust social services system here." He was right, and that made Josh's situation even more precarious. "Sorry," Mac said softly. "I shouldn't have brought this up. I ruined dinner." "No, you didn't ruin it. It's important to care about children. You seem to take this very seriously." "I do. Children are our collective responsibility." Mac smiled. "Another reason to admire you." The rest of the evening passed in lighter conversation, but Tessie could barely concentrate. Knowing that Josh had nightmares left her desperate to act. The child was suffering, and each day that passed was another day of unnecessary trauma. When Mac walked her to the door, he stopped and looked at her. "Teresa, I know you said your situation is complicated, but I want you to know that whatever it is, I don't care." "Mac, let me finish. There's something special happening between us. I can feel it, and I know you can too. Whatever your secret is, maybe you don't have to carry it alone." For a moment, Tessie considered telling everything about Josh, about Laurie, about her true identity. Mac was intelligent, compassionate, and clearly cared about Josh too. But then she thought about what could go wrong. If John discovered who she really was, he would flee with Josh immediately. And if Mac decided he couldn't get involved in a potentially dangerous situation. "Thank you," she said finally, "for everything, for dinner, for the conversation, for being you." Mac leaned in and kissed her forehead softly. "I'll be here when you're ready to talk." As she walked home in the tropical darkness, Tessie knew she was reaching a point of no return. She was falling in love with Mac, and that complicated everything. But Josh needed her, and she couldn't abandon him because of her own feelings, no matter how much it hurt. Mac's house was located on a small hill overlooking the sea, a simple but cozy wooden construction surrounded by tropical plants. When Tessie arrived the following evening, he welcomed her with a smile that made her stomach flutter. He had made an effort. The veranda was lit by candles, a small table was set for two, and the smell of something delicious came from the kitchen. "You cook?" she asked, impressed. "One of the advantages of living alone on an island. You learn fast or you starve." Dinner was a mixture of local seafood with Caribbean spices. Mac had even managed to get a bottle of white wine, which they drank. While watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Tell me about your life before St. Matthew," said Mac, pouring more wine. Tessie hesitated. Every personal question was a minefield. "There's not much to tell. Work, research, some travel. Family? A younger sister. We're very close. At least that was true. And you? Besides mongooses and coral reefs, what else interests Dr. Kenneth McAllister?" Mac laughed. "Music, actually. I play guitar. Badly, but I play. I like reading biographies." and lately spending time with a certain mysterious marine biologist. Mysterious. You are, you know. There's something about you, like you're carrying a secret. Tessie almost choked on her wine. Everyone has secrets. True, but yours seem heavy. They fell silent for a moment, the sound of waves filling the space. Tessie could feel Mac's eyes on her, studying her. Mac, can I ask you a question about John and Josh? Sure. Have you noticed anything strange about their behavior, besides the isolation? Mac tilted his head, thoughtful. Why do you ask? Professional curiosity. I work with families sometimes, and there are certain dynamics that... Josh has nightmares. The interruption was so sudden that Tessie almost dropped her glass. How do you know? My house is relatively close to theirs. Sometimes at night, I can hear a child crying, screams as if he were afraid. Tessie's heart tightened. And John? John always says it's normal, that Josh is adapting. But I don't know. I've worked with children before in educational programs at the university. Josh doesn't seem like a child who's simply adapting. What does he seem like? Mac looked directly into her eyes. He seems like a traumatized child. Tessie had to look away. Maybe we should do something. Like what? We don't have any evidence of abuse or neglect. And even if we did, we're on a small Caribbean island. It's not like there's a robust social services system here. He was right, and that made Josh's situation even more precarious. Sorry, Mac said softly. I shouldn't have brought this up. I ruined dinner. No, you didn't ruin it. It's important to care about children. You seem to take this very seriously. I do. Children are our collective responsibility. Mac smiled. Another reason to admire you. The rest of the evening passed in lighter conversation, but Tessie could barely concentrate. Knowing that Josh had nightmares left her desperate to act. The child was suffering, and each day that passed was another day of unnecessary trauma. When Mac walked her to the door, he stopped and looked at her. Teresa, I know you said your situation is complicated, but I want you to know that whatever it is, I don't care. Mac, let me finish. There's something special happening between us. I can feel it, and I know you can too. Whatever your secret is, maybe you don't have to carry it alone. For a moment, Tessie considered telling everything about Josh, about Laurie, about her true identity. Mac was intelligent, compassionate, and clearly cared about Josh too. But then she thought about what could go wrong if John discovered who she really was. He would flee with Josh immediately, and if Mac decided he couldn't get involved in a potentially dangerous situation. Thank you, she said finally, for everything, for dinner, for the conversation, for being you. Mac leaned in and kissed her forehead softly. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. As she walked home in the tropical darkness, Tessie knew she was reaching a point of no return. She was falling in love with Mac, and that complicated everything, but Josh needed her, and she couldn't abandon him because of her own feelings. No matter how much it hurt, the following days brought an unexpectedly comfortable routine. Tessie continued her research with Mac, organized educational activities for local children, always including Josh, and gradually gained the boy's trust. It was during the third educational expedition that Josh finally opened up completely. They were alone on the beach, collecting shells, while the other children played in shallower water. John had been distracted in a conversation with other parents, leaving Josh with more freedom than usual. Teresa, said Josh, looking at a shell in his palm. Can I tell you a secret? Tessie's heart raced. Of course, Josh. You can tell me anything. I remember my mommy. Daddy John said she doesn't love me anymore, but I remember her reading me stories at night and singing to me when I had nightmares. Tessie knelt beside him. What kind of stories did she read? stories about pirates and treasures, and one about a boy who got lost on an island and found his way back home. Laurie had always loved adventure stories. Tessie remembered her sister reading the same books when they were children. Josh, where did you live before coming to St. Matthew? In a big house with a garden. There was a swing hanging from a big tree. Mommy always pushed me really high. Tessie knew that house. It was where Laurie had lived with Bob before the divorce. And Daddy Bob, do you remember him? Josh's eyes filled with tears. He taught me how to ride a bike, and he always made pancakes on Sunday mornings. Why don't they come get me, Teresa? Why doesn't anyone come? Tessie had to fight back her own tears. Josh, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. Your mommy loves you very, very much, and there are people looking for you. Really? Really. Sometimes when adults get upset with each other, they do things that aren't right, but a mother's love for her child never disappears. Daddy John said they forgot about me. Daddy John is wrong. Nobody forgot about you. Josh looked at her with hope shining in his eyes. Do you think they'll find me? I'm sure of it. Josh! John's voice cut through the air. He was walking quickly toward them with an irritated expression. What are you two talking about? Just about shells, Daddy, Josh replied quickly, becoming withdrawn again. John looked suspiciously at Tessie. Dr. Collins, may I speak with you? Of course. Josh, go play with the other children. After Josh walked away, John approached Tessie. Dr. Collins, I've noticed that you've been paying a lot of attention to Josh lately. Tessie tried to keep her voice calm. He's an interesting child, very intelligent. Yes, he is, but I want to make it clear that I prefer conversations with my son to be supervised. Nothing personal, you understand? I'm just cautious with strangers. I understand perfectly. It's natural for a father to want to protect his son. John studied her for a moment. Do you have children, Dr. Collins? No. Then maybe you don't fully understand the responsibility of raising a child alone. There was something in the way he said it that made Tessie shudder. You're right. It must be very difficult. It is, especially when you're trying to protect the child from negative influences. Negative influences? People who could confuse a child, fill his head with ideas that aren't true. Tessie felt a chill. Did John know something, or was he just being paranoid? Of course, she said. Children need consistency. Exactly. Well, I hope we continue to understand each other. There was a subtle threat in his words, and Tessie knew she would need to be more careful. John was getting suspicious. That night, she met Mac on the beach, and for a walk. She needed to process what had happened, and Mac was the only person she could talk to, even if she couldn't tell the whole truth. You seem worried, Mac observed as they walked on the sand under the moonlight. John confronted me. Today, he said he doesn't want me spending too much time alone with Josh. Really? Why? He said he's cautious with strangers. Mac frowned. That's strange. You're clearly a trustworthy person, and Josh needs social interaction. That's what I think too. They walked in silence for a few minutes before Mac spoke. Again, Teresa, can I ask you a direct question? Tessie's heart accelerated. Sure. Did you know Josh before coming to St. Matthew? The question caught her completely by surprise. Why do you ask that? Because the way you look at him, it's like you know him, like you have a personal connection. Tessie stopped walking. Mac was standing in front of her, his green eyes serious in the moonlight. And there's another thing, he continued. I made some calls today to the University of Miami. They've never heard of a Teresa Collins in the marine biology department. Tessie's world seemed to stop. Mac, who are you really? And what are you really doing in St. Matthew? Tessie looked at the man she had fallen in love with, knowing that the moment of truth had arrived. She could no longer pretend. My name is Tessie Kenyon, she said slowly. And Josh is my nephew. The silence that followed was deafening. Max stared at her, processing the information, while Tessie felt like the world was crumbling around her. "Your nephew," he repeated finally. "Yes. And John. He's not Josh's father. Or rather, maybe he is. Biologically, but Josh was raised by my sister Lori and her ex-husband Bob. John kidnapped him during a complicated divorce." Mac ran his hand through his hair, clearly shocked. "My God, and you came here to bring him back home, to his real family. Why didn't you go to the police?" "I did. But John has visitation rights, and technically he didn't commit any crime by taking Josh to another country. The legal system is complicated in these cases." Mac began pacing back and forth in the sand. "So you assumed a false identity and came after him alone?" "I had no choice. My sister is destroying herself, and Josh." Tessie felt tears beginning to fall. "You said yourself he seems traumatized." "He is. He's being kept away from everything he knows, from everyone he loves. And me? Where do I fit into all this?" The question Tessie feared most. You didn't know. I didn't plan that." She stopped, trying to find the right words. "I didn't. I'd planned to fall in love with you." Max stopped pacing. "Fall in love? Yes. And I know now you must hate me for lying, for using you." "Tessie." Mac approached and held her hands. "I don't hate you." "You don't? You're trying to save a child. How could I hate you for that?" The relief Tessie felt was so intense it almost made her collapse. "So, will you help me?" Mac hesitated. "Is it dangerous?" "It could be. John is getting paranoid, and if he discovers who I really am, he'll run away with Josh." "Exactly." Mac was quiet for a long moment, looking at the sea. "What's your plan?" "I'm still working on it. I need to find a way to get Josh off the island without John realizing until it's too late. And then I take Josh back to Lori and hope the legal system is more effective on American soil." Mac nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll help." "Mac, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. That child is suffering. I can see it every day. And you," he touched her face gently, "you're brave and foolish at the same time. I can't let you do this alone." Tessie threw herself into his arms, feeling like an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you. But we have to be smart about this. John is already suspicious of you. We need a solid plan." They spent the rest of the night at Mac's house, planning. Mac knew the flight schedules leaving the island, knew when fishing boats departed, had contacts who could help. "The problem is getting Josh out of the house without alarming John," said Mac. "He never leaves the boy alone, except during our educational expeditions. But he's always nearby." Tessie thought for a moment. "What if we organized a special expedition? Something that required parents to stay on land while we take the children to a specific location. Like what? Snorkeling in a more remote area. We could say it's dangerous for non-swimmers." Mac considered the idea. "Does John know how to swim?" "I have no idea. I'll find out. And I also need to check flight schedules. If we can get Josh away from the expedition, we need a quick way off the island." Tessie nodded. "Mac, are you sure about this? It could be legally complicated for you, too." Mac pulled her closer. "Tessie, when you look at Josh, what do you see? A lost child who needs to go home. I see the same thing. That's all I need to know." They spent 2 more hours refining the details. The expedition would be next Friday. Mac would find out if John could swim and also discreetly check about travel documents for Josh. Tessie would continue gaining the boy's trust, preparing him psychologically for what was to come. "There's one thing that worries me," said Mac when it was almost dawn. "What? What if we're wrong? What if John really is Josh's father and is trying to protect him from something?" Tessie thought about her sister, the months of despair, Josh's tears when he talked about his mother. "We're not wrong. Lori loves that boy more than her own life, and Josh knows it." "Okay, then we do this. We do this." As Tessie walked home in the early morning hours, she felt a mixture of hope and terror. In less than a week, everything would change. Josh would return home, or she would lose the only chance she had to save him, and maybe she would lose Mac too if things went wrong. But she had no choice. Josh needed her, and she couldn't fail. The next few days were a mixture of careful preparation and growing anxiety. Mac discovered that John couldn't swim, crucial information for their plan. He also confirmed there was a flight to Miami on Friday afternoon, followed by a connection to Boston. Tessie, meanwhile, began subtly preparing Josh for what was to come. "Josh," she said during one of their beach conversations, "would you like to see your mommy again?" The boy's eyes immediately lit up. "Do you think it's possible? Maybe it's more possible than you imagine." But Daddy John said, "Josh, sometimes adults say things when they're scared or hurt that aren't completely true. Your mommy never stopped loving you. Never." "How do you know?" Tessie chose her words carefully. "Because I know mothers who love their children, and that a kind of love never disappears." Josh was quiet for a moment. "If I could choose, I'd want to be with Mommy and Daddy Bob, but I don't want Daddy John to be sad." Tessie's heart ached. Even in the midst of all this, Josh worried about John's feelings. He was an incredibly sweet and empathetic child. "Josh, if there was a way for you to go back to your mommy, would you go? Even if Daddy John didn't want me to?" "Even so." Josh looked at her with his big, serious eyes. "Will you help me? I'll do everything I can. Promise?" "I promise." On Wednesday, Mac and Tessie finalized the plan details. The special expedition would be presented as a unique opportunity to observe sea turtles in a deeper reef area, accessible only by boat and dangerous for inexperienced swimmers. "What if John decides to go anyway?" asked Tessie. "Then we improvise, but knowing him, I doubt he'd want to admit he can't swim in front of the other parents." On Thursday night, Tessie could barely sleep. She went over the plan 1,000 times, in her mind, thinking of everything that could go wrong. What if John got suspicious? What if Josh got scared at the last moment and didn't want to go? What if they missed the flight? At 5 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep and went to the veranda to watch the sunrise. The sky was painted pink and orange, and the sea was calm as a mirror. It was a perfect day. She hoped it was a good sign. Her phone vibrated. "A message from Mac. Ready for today?" "As ready as possible," she replied. "It's going to work." "I hope so." Educational expeditions always started at 9 in the morning on the main beach. Tessie arrived early to prepare materials, trying to appear calm and professional while her heart beat frantically. Mac arrived with the boat they had rented, a small but reliable vessel that would take them to the chosen diving location. Most importantly, it had a powerful enough engine to quickly reach the port, where they could catch a taxi to the airport. One by one, families began arriving. Tessie greeted each child, but her eyes constantly searched for Josh. Finally, she saw them approaching. John seemed more tense than usual, and Josh walked beside him with the familiar posture of someone trying not to draw attention. "Good morning, John." "Good morning, Josh," Tessie greeted with a smile she hoped seemed natural. "Dr. Collins," John replied formally. "Josh is excited about today's expedition." "That's great. It's going to be an incredible experience." Mac approached the group explaining the expedition details. "Since we're going to deeper waters today, only children who can swim well will be able to participate in snorkeling. Parents who don't feel comfortable in the water can wait for us on the beach." John frowned. "How deep is the water?" "About 3 meters at the diving point. It's not much, but it can be intimidating for inexperienced swimmers." I think I can stay on the beach." "No problem," said Mac casually. "It's common. Many parents prefer to relax on the beach while the children explore." Tessie breathed a sigh of relief. The first part of the plan had worked. They boarded the boat, 6 children, including Josh plus Tessie and Mac. John stayed on the beach with two other parents, waving as the boat moved away from the coast. Josh was sitting next to Tessie, his eyes shining with an excitement she hadn't seen in a long time. "I'm nervous," he whispered to her. "That's normal, but you'll be fine, I promise." As the boat moved away from the beach, Tessie looked back and saw John becoming a small figure on the sand. Her breathing was accelerated, but she tried to stay calm. "For Josh, she said quietly, "remember what we talked about yesterday?" He nodded. "Well, today might be the day." Josh's eyes widened. "Today, maybe. Are you ready?" Josh looked at the island receding, then at Tessie. "Will I see Mommy?" "Yes," said Tessie, her voice full of emotion. "If everything goes right, you'll see your mommy today." Tears began rolling down Josh's face. "Really? Really?" Mac, who had heard the conversation, approached. "Josh, you're a very brave boy, and your mommy misses you very much." "How do you know?" Tessie took a deep breath. It was time to tell the truth. "Because I'm your mommy's sister. I'm your Aunt Tessie." Josh looked at her with wide eyes, processing the information. "Aunt Tessie? But you said your name was Teresa." "I had to lie to be able to reach you. I'm sorry for that." Josh was quiet for a moment, then smiled. The first genuine smile Tessie had seen since arriving on the island. "Did Mommy send you to get me?" "Yes, she did. And Daddy Bob is waiting for you too." Josh threw himself into Tessie's arms, finally allowing himself to cry all the tears he had held back for months. "I knew it," he sobbed. "I knew you hadn't forgotten me." The rest of the journey to the mainland passed in a blur of emotions and careful logistics. Mac had discreetly changed the boat's course as soon as they were out of visual range of the beach, heading to a neighboring island where a contact of his was waiting with a car. The other children, initially confused by the change of plans, were distracted with stories and games, while Tessie calmly explained to Josh what was happening. "Daddy John will be very angry," said Josh, worried. "He might be," Tessie admitted. "But Josh, what he did was wrong. Children should be with people who love them and care for them properly. He said he loves me. Maybe he does, in his own way. But love doesn't mean keeping someone away from their family." Within 2 hours, they were at an airport on a larger island, rushing to catch the flight to Miami. Mac had arranged the necessary documents. Josh still had his American passport, which John had used to bring him to the Caribbean. "What about the other children?" asked Josh while they waited to board. "Mac will take them back to St. Matthew and explain there was an emergency," Tessie replied. "They'll be fine." "And you, Mac?" Josh looked at the man who had helped in his rescue. "Will you get in trouble?" Mac knelt to be at the boy's height. "I might, Josh, but it's worth it to see you happy." "Thank you," said Josh simply, but with a sincerity that touched both adults' hearts. During the flight to Miami, Josh alternated between excitement and nervousness. "What if Mommy is different? What if she doesn't recognize me?" "Josh," said Tessie, holding his small hand, "your mommy hasn't changed at all. She thinks about you every day, every hour. She has your photos all over the house." "Really? Really? And she'll cry when she sees you, but from happiness." The connecting flight to Boston seemed endless. Josh slept for a while, his head resting on Tessie's shoulder, but she stayed awake, watching him and still not quite believing they had succeeded. Her phone had rung several times during the trips, numbers from St. Matthew that she didn't answer. John had probably discovered what happened and was desperate. When they finally landed in Boston, Tessie called Laurie. "Tessie?" Her sister's voice was anxious. "How are things? Did you manage to talk to Josh?" "Laurie," said Tessie, smiling through tears, "someone here wants to talk to you." She handed the phone to Josh. "Mommy!" Josh's small voice echoed through the phone. Laurie's cry of joy on the other end of the line was audible even from a distance. Josh began crying again, saying, "Mommy, The reunion between Laurie and Josh was everything Tessie had imagined and more. Laurie was waiting at the airport, pale and nervous, Bob beside her. When they saw Josh running toward them, both collapsed. "My boy," Laurie whispered, kissing Josh's face repeatedly. "My dear boy, I missed you so much, Mommy." Josh sobbed in her arms. Bob was crying too, his large hands stroking Josh's hair. "Look how much you've grown, champ." Tessie watched the reunion from a respectful distance, her heart overflowing with joy and relief. It had worked. Josh was back where he belonged, but her happiness was tempered by concern for Mac. He had returned to St. Matthew to face John and the consequences of their actions. Tessie didn't know when or if she would see him again. In the following days, Josh readjusted to life with Laurie and Bob with an ease that confirmed this was indeed his home. The nightmares stopped almost immediately, and he returned to being the happy and curious child he had always been. "He asks about you every day," said Laurie one afternoon while they had tea in the kitchen. Josh was in the backyard, playing on the swing he had missed so much. "About me?" "Aunt Tessie, the heroine, who came to save him. You're a legend to him now." Tessie smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I don't feel like a heroine. I feel like someone who finally did what I should have done from the beginning. Tessie, you risked everything for him, for us. How can I thank you? By seeing him happy. That's all I want." Laurie studied her sister's face. "And Mac? Tell me about him." Tessie had mentioned Mac only superficially, but Laurie had always been good at reading her emotions. "There's not much to tell. He helped me, and now he's dealing with the consequences. You fell in love with him." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Tessie admitted, "but it was complicated from the beginning. I was lying about who I was, about why I was there." "But he helped you anyway?" "Yes. When he discovered the truth, he didn't hesitate to help me. Then he loves you too." Tessie looked at her sister. "How can you be sure?" "Because nobody would risk so much for a person unless they felt something very strong." That night, Tessie finally checked her messages. There were dozens of missed calls from St. Matthew numbers, but also a text message from Mac. "Is Josh okay?" "I hope so. John fled the island the next day. Local police asked some questions, but nothing serious. I miss you." McTessie looked at the message for a long time before responding. "Josh is great. Back with his family, happy. Thank you for everything. I miss you too." The response came almost immediately. "Can I call you?" Tessie hesitated only a moment before responding. "Yes." The phone rang 5 minutes later. "Hi," said Mac's familiar voice. "Hi. How is Josh?" "Incredible. It's like he came back to life. He's playing, laughing. He's the Josh he should always have been." "I'm glad. And how are you?" "Relieved, grateful, a little lost." "Lost?" "It's strange. You know, I spent months planning this, then weeks in St. Matthew executing the plan. Now it's all over, and I don't quite know what to do with myself." "I know what you can do." "What?" "You can come back to St. Matthew." Tessie's heart jumped. "Mac," "Tessie, I know everything started as a lie. Your identity, your reasons for being here. But what happened between us wasn't a lie, was it?" "No," she whispered. "It wasn't a lie. Then come back. Not as Teresa Collins, fake researcher. As Tessie Kenyon, the brave woman who saved her nephew. And who, I hope, fell in love with a slightly crazy biologist who studies mongooses." Tessie laughed through tears. "Completely crazy. Is that a yes?" "Mac, how can I go back after everything? The island people must hate me for lying. Actually, you've become something of a local legend. The woman who fooled everyone to save a child. Carmen wants you to come back just to hear the whole real story. And John, Disappeared. Nobody knows where he went. But Tessie, he knew what he was doing was wrong. That's why he fled instead of fighting. Tessie was quiet for a moment, considering. "Have you thought about the proposal?" asked Mac. "I'm still thinking." "Well, if it helps with your decision, I can mention that I have a house with an ocean view, a fascinating job, and a heart that only works right when you're around." "That's kind of dramatic." "I'm feeling dramatic. It's the effect of the tropics," Tessie smiled. "Mac? Yes? I love you. I love you too. Now can you stop thinking and give me an answer?" "Yes. Yes, you can stop thinking. Or yes, you're coming." "Oh, back?" "Yes, I'm coming back." Epilogue. 6 months later, Tessie woke to the familiar sound of waves breaking on the beach and the smell of coffee coming from the kitchen. Through the open window, she could see Mac running on the beach, his usual morning routine. Life in St. Matthew had proven to be everything she didn't know she wanted. Working with Mac on conservation projects, teaching local children about marine life, this time with her real identity and building a life with the man she loved. Her phone rang. It was a video call from Laurie. "Aunt Tessie!" Josh's animated voice filled the room. "Hi, my love. How are you?" "Great. Look what I learned at school." Josh held up a drawing of tropical fish. "The teacher said these are the types of fish that live where you are. It's beautiful. You're becoming a marine life expert. Mommy said we can visit you during summer vacation." Tessie looked at Laurie, who nodded, smiling. "That would be incredible. Mac is dying to meet you in person. Is he your boyfriend?" "Yes, he is." "Are you going to marry him?" Tessie laughed. "Maybe. What do you think?" "I think yes. That way you'll be happy forever, like in fairy tales." After they hung up, Tessie got up and went to the veranda. Mac was returning from his run, waving when he saw her. "Good morning, sleeping beauty," he said, kissing her when he reached the veranda. "Josh wants to know if we're getting married." "Josh is a smart boy. So, are we? Is that a proposal?" Mac smiled, pulling her closer. "Tessie Kenyon, you saved a child, made me fall hopelessly in love, and brought more adventure to my life than I thought possible. Will you marry me?" She pretended to think. "Are you sure you can handle more adventures? With you, I'm ready for anything." "Then yes. Yes, I want to marry you." As they kissed on the veranda overlooking the Caribbean Sea, Tessie thought about how life could take unexpected turns. She had come to St. Matthew on a desperate rescue mission and found not only Josh, but also the love of her life. Sometimes, happy endings came disguised as dangerous adventures, and sometimes, saving someone you love also meant saving yourself. End Caribbean Secrets, a story of love, courage, and the strength of family bonds, where a desperate aunt discovered that sometimes you have to risk everything to save those you love most, and that true love can bloom in the most unexpected place, repeatedly.